Can you show me 4 fingers? Over 400 years ago, the only people that lived in America were the Native Americans. There weren't, and you'll see there's some pictures on the screen to help you understand what I'm talking about. There weren't any states yet 400 years ago, so all the Native Americans lived in tribes. Because they were born in America, they understood life here. While the Native Americans were living happily here in America, way across the ocean in a place called England. Do you see way across the ocean where that little tiny dot is way on the left? In England, it was not so good. People there were being persecuted for being Christians. That means people were being mean to them for being Christians. But also, people in England were crowded. They were all squished in a little room, and they heard about this amazing country called America. So people started taking boats to come over to America. There was a Native American boy named Squanto who was intrigued by these white men. They were kind to him, and when he went back to England, he went with them to see where they lived. And when he was there, Squanto learned English, but he missed his home. So in 1607, long time ago, he learned that there was a man named John Smith who was leaving England to come back to America. So he said Squanto could come with him. There was also a boat with a man. Oh, everybody do thumbs up for John Smith. John Smith was a good guy. In the other boat was a guy named Thomas Hunt, which we're going to find out he was not a good guy. Thomas Hunt took another ship. They got back to America. Squanto was so happy to be back in America. He wasn't here very long. And Thomas Hunt asked him to come on his boat to look at something. But it was a trick. And as soon as Squanto was on the boat, he grabbed him and he tied him up, and took him to the dark room on the bottom of the ship with some other Native Americans. Squanto was so confused. All the other white men he'd met had been nice to him. Why was this man, Thomas Hunt, doing this to him? Pretty soon he felt the boat move, and he knew they were taking the long journey back across the ocean. So Thomas Hunt, everybody do thumbs down again, took these Squanto and these slaves and sold them in Spain. So Squanto lived in Spain for 5 years as a slave. History doesn't tell us how, but somehow Squanto escaped England. Or he escaped Spain and he went back to England where he knew that there was good white men, and he met a man named Mr. Dermer. Can you do thumbs up again? Mr. Dermer was a wonderful man that treated Squanto kindly. And Mr. Dermer was a rich man, and he decided to go explore America for himself and take Squanto with him. So in 1620, say 1620.
1620.
That was an important year. In June of 1620, Mr. Dermer and Squanto arrived back in America. As soon as he got back, he was so happy to be back. He ran to where his people called the Potuecs lived. That was his tribe of people, but no one was there. So he went to the next tribe and said, "Do you know where the Potuecs moved to?" But they told him some very sad news. They said while he was away in Spain, a terrible sickness had come and killed everyone in his tribe. So Squanto was the only one left of his tribe. That made Squanto so sad. But while Squanto was in Spain, he had learned about Jesus from a kind monk who was like a pastor. And so I'm sure Squanto wondered, what could God's plan be for my life? Since he didn't have anywhere to live, the neighboring tribe called the Wampanoag said he could live with them. Squanto soon became friends with a man named Samoset and started teaching him English. Remember I said 1620 was an important year. In September of 1620 is when the Pilgrim's boat on the Mayflower arrived. This was the first time that whole families had come to America, not just men. And as soon, because they were full of Christians, they'd come to America to worship God freely.
Yes.
As soon as they landed in a place called Plymouth Rock, they knelt down and they thanked God for being in America. And they thanked God that they had the freedom to worship. But unfortunately, the Pilgrims didn't know how to live in America like the Native Americans did. And that winter was very cold, and many of them died. In the spring of 1621, Samoset was walking along one time and found their village. Now, many Native Americans hated the white men at this point because of the bad things they had done. But Samoset had learned from Squanto that there were some nice Englishmen. So Samoset walked up to their village and said, "Hello, Englishmen." They were shocked that he could speak English, but that was all the English Samoset knew. So Samoset ran and got Squanto. Squanto introduced himself to the Pilgrims. Have a seat, buddy. And taught them how to live in America. He taught them things like how to hunt deer and how to hunt buffalo, because even though Squanto spoke English and been to England, he knew how to live in America. Go ahead and go to the next slide. He taught them how to make their crops grow with this crazy thing by putting a fish in with this seed.
Yes.
And because Squanto had taught them this special trick, when the harvest time came, the Pilgrims had tons of food. They were so excited, and they knew it was thanks to Squanto because of his kindness that he had showed them. So they decided to do a big feast to give thanks to God for their blessings. And so they said, "Squanto, we want you to invite all of your Native American friends in your tribe to come." So the tribe came, and they had a feast for 3 days. And that's why we celebrate Thanksgiving on Thursday, so we can eat Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. All right? And at the first Thanksgiving, the Native Americans and Pilgrims were together, and the governor, the leader of the Pilgrims' name was William Bradford. And he signed a treaty with the Native Americans' chief, who was Chief Massasoit. And they signed a treaty to live in peace and not hurt each other. Mm-hmm. And that treaty lasted for 50 years. Show me 5. The whole time that those men were alive, that treaty lasted. And you know what? Squanto ended up living with the Pilgrims the rest of his life. And he continued to teach them about living in America. When Squanto was finally old and about to die, he asked his friend, Governor William Bradford, to come pray for him to make sure that he would go to the Englishman's God in heaven. Mm-hmm. So that's how we know that Squanto loved Jesus. And Squanto in return said, "I want to leave everything I have to the Pilgrim people so they always will remember how much I loved them." And so here's what I want you boys and girls and adults to know we can learn from Squanto's story. 3 important things. Everybody say number 1.
Number 1.
Forgiveness.
Forgiveness.
Squanto could have hated white men after what Thomas Hunt did to him. But he knew that even though Thomas Hunt was bad, there was many good Englishmen. So he chose to forgive him and forgive the Englishmen instead of hating them. Everybody say number 2.
Number 2.
God can turn bad things into good.
Turn bad things into good.
Good job. It was so bad that Squanto was captured and became a slave, but because he was in Spain, he didn't die from the bad disease that everyone else did. And so it was good. God turned that into good. Everybody say number 3.
Number 3.
Jesus will send the right person to help you.
Send the right person to that's right.
We, boys and girls, we know the story of Squanto because he helped the Pilgrims. And without Squanto, we would not have Thanksgiving in America because the Pilgrims didn't know how to survive in America. So God knew the Pilgrims would need Squanto's help. So God orchestrated Squanto's life so he could learn English, so he could have a trust in Englishmen, so that he could help the Pilgrims. And the Pilgrims were so thankful for him. So everybody say, "Thank you, Jesus."
Thank you, Jesus.
Squanto.
For Squanto.
Thank you, Jesus.
Thank you, Jesus.
You have a great plan for me.
You have a great plan for me.
Happy Thanksgiving!